Hello everyone, and welcome to the Natlan Speculation mini-series finale. Today, I'll be going over almost everything we know about Natlan, with some of my own speculations mixed in as well. This video has 6 main sections, those being lore, plot, characters, environment, enemies, and culture. Each of these is then split into smaller topics, which are all listed with timestamps in the description. And for those of you who want to stay leak-free, don't worry, no leaks will be shown or mentioned in this video. If you have seen the leaks and want to talk about them in the comments, please be respectful and give a leak warning and enough space so that the read more option will appear. There may also be more official Natlan teasers after the release of this video that I obviously can't talk about now, but I will be discussing them on my Twitter and Discord, as well as live over on my Twitch. And if you like this video, consider subscribing, commenting, or sharing this video with a friend. This video took me a lot of time and effort, even more than the Fontaine mega video last year, so all of that would be very much appreciated. Now, this video does contain spoilers for all the quests listed on screen now, so if you haven't done those, you have been warned. With all that said though, let's get right into the video. The first section of this video is the lore of Natlan, which will be going over events that happened in Natlan ranging from the Archon War all the way up to the present day. To begin, I want to talk about the Archon War itself. The Archon War is a title given to the various conflicts that occurred all around Teyvat between 3,700 and 2,000 years ago. Gods all across Teyvat fought to claim one of the 7 divine thrones, and every single nation was affected. In Mondstadt, Decarabian would be slain during a rebellion against him, while Andrias conceded to Barbados, allowing the latter to ascend as the Anemo Archon. In Liyue, Morax would fight against countless other gods, becoming the Geo Archon. In Inazuma, the twin gods Baal and Beelzebul claimed victory together, with Baal ascending as the Electro Archon. In Sumeru, the 3 god kings, King Deshret, Nabu Malikata, and Greater Lord Rukkhadevata, would rule together until only the latter remained, making Rukkhadevata the Dendro Archon. In Fontaine, the rule of Remuria would fall, and Egeria would be called upon to rule the nation, making her the Hydro Archon. Of course, Natlan would have been affected by these events as well. At the moment though, we don't know much about the Archon War in Natlan and how it affected the nation. However, some of the lore we have about Natlan could potentially fit into the Archon War. In version 4.6, we were introduced to some brand new Natlan lore with the Unfinished Reverie artifact set. I have made an entire video that goes over this artifact set, so my description here will be a simplified version. The lore of Unfinished Reverie describes a tyrannical king who ruled over Natlan a long time ago. He was an evil king who saw the Saurians of Natlan as inferior to humans, not as the companions they are seen as today. He even went so far as to have a man killed for protecting the Saurians. Fortunately, this king would eventually be overthrown by a scarlet-eyed hero and the friends he gathered. After the king's fall, humans and Saurians would become closer and would work together. Now, the exact location of this lore on the timeline isn't given, but it is worth noting that the lore does make mentions of forbidden knowledge. Since forbidden knowledge ties in heavily with King Deshret and the Archon War, it would make sense for this lore to happen around the time of the Archon War. Other than lore from artifact sets, we can also speculate on the Archon War based on the teasers we've gotten from Natlan so far. Starting with the Saurian teaser, we can see quite a few different skeletons scattered about in the background. These skeletons could belong to dragons or other creatures from the time of the Tyrant and the Archon War. In the 4.8 teaser, we also get a look at a part of Natlan's in-game map, which has been stitched together to look like this. At the very bottom of this map, there is an object that looks somewhat like a pointy tail, which I initially thought could be part of a giant skeleton. However, this could just be a similar structure to the one we see behind Mualani a few seconds later. Keeping on the topic of the map though, we can see that Natlan has incredibly varied landscapes. There are valleys, plateaus, wetlands, woodlands, and so much more just in this small area that we've seen so far. I believe that some of this variety could have been caused by events in the Archon War. Some of the landscapes we see could be the result of actions that the Pyro Archon took all the way back then. This wouldn't even be the first time we've seen environmental storytelling tell us about the power of an Archon. In Mondstadt, Barbados cleaved the tops off of mountains and threw them out to sea, forming Musk Reef and the Golden Apple Archipelago. In Liyue, the stone spears thrown down by Morax would form what is now known as Guyun Stone Forest. In Inazuma, the Bale Thunder-plagued Musojin Gorge was formed when Raiden A struck Orobashi with her Musou no Hitotachi, splitting Yashiri Island in two. In Sumeru, the entire rainforest was created by Rukkhadevata and her Varuna contraption. Environmental storytelling is already quite common in Genshin, and more is always welcome. Moving on though, I'd now like to talk about what happened between the Archon War and the Cataclysm of 500 years ago. In Natlan, we actually know quite a bit about what happened between these two major events. First, let's talk about the lore given to us through the weapon Talking Stick. The lore of this weapon tells us about the formation of the Mare Jvari, an endless sea of ash where the wind does not blow. While we don't know the exact time of its formation, we do know that it took place at least over 1,000 years ago. An organization known as the Wanderers Troop once visited this location, and they roamed the world 1,000 years ago. As for how exactly the Mare Jvari was formed, it isn't known for certain. The lore of Talking Stick tells us about Tenakth gathering allies from each of Natlan's tribes for an upcoming battle, and how that battle will result in the formation of the Mare Jvari, but the exact cause of its formation remains unclear. I believe it was formed due to the death of a very powerful god, perhaps even a previous Pyro Archon. When a god dies in Genshin, no matter how weak, they release a ton of energy that can leave a lasting effect on an entire area. We've seen this with Khaenri'ah and Saltaire, Guizhong and Suije Slope, and Orobashi on Yashiori Island. The effects they leave behind match the power they held, so the death of a pyro-aligned god could definitely result in an Ashen Sea. We also know that Vanessa's tribe, the Children of Murata, left Natlan over 1,000 years ago. The reason for their departure is not given, but I believe it could tie back to the Mare Jvari. If the death of the Pyro Archon Murata caused the Mare Jvari to form, they would have lost their god. They may have seen no reason to stay in Natlan at that point, which could be why they left. If this is the case, the Mare Jvari likely formed way more than 1,000 years ago, as in the manga, Vanessa knew very little about Murata or her history. Getting closer to the present day now, it's time to talk about the Cataclysm. Like the Archon War, the Cataclysm was another major event that affected all the nations of Teyvat. Unfortunately, we don't know that much about how it affected Natlan. Still, it's safe to say that the event had some sort of impact on the nation. Earlier in the Archon War section, I mentioned the various skeletons that can be seen in the background of the Saurian teaser. Instead of coming from the era of the Tyrant or the Archon War, these skeletons could have come to rest here during the Cataclysm. Perhaps they could belong to abyssal creations, similar to Durin or Elenus. Additionally, this time period could be very important to the Pyro Archon. In the previous 3 nations that we visited, the previous Archon was killed during the Cataclysm. Makoto was killed in Khaenri'ah, Rukkhadevata succumbed to forbidden knowledge, and Egeria was slain by abyssal forces at Tunigi Hollow. Therefore, it's definitely possible that a previous Pyro Archon could have been killed during the Cataclysm as well. This would be the second Pyro Archon to pass away, the first being the one whose death caused the formation of the Mare Jvari. I do think that there were more than just 2 Pyro Archons, and that these multiple deaths will be important to Mavuika's story, but I'll touch more on that in the plot section. For Natlan as a whole though, again, we don't know much about the Cataclysm's influence. I think it could have some similarities to the story of Tenakth presented in the lore of Talking Stick though. Just as Tenakth brought the tribes together all that time ago, the tribes would come together once again to fight against a common enemy. Now then, we've finally reached the present day of Natlan, where the Pyro Archon Mavuika is in charge. Unlike previous nations though, it seems that Natlan does not have a single governing body that rules over the entire nation. Instead, the people of Natlan each belong to a different tribe, and each of these tribes follows different rules. Back during Tanoch's era, there were at least 6 major tribes, so it can be assumed that this is the number of tribes in the present day as well. One of these tribes is the Nanitskayan people, or the Children of Echoes, mentioned by Ranjit. According to him, they live and work in the mines of eastern Natlan. The tribes of Natlan also work alongside Saurians, the dragons of the nation. At the end of the Fontaine Archon quests, Neuvillette tells us that Saurians have undergone long-term development and evolution. They are now quite different from the bishops and the 7 sovereigns, and Neuvillette thinks that he wouldn't be welcome there. Now, the people of Natlan work closely with their Saurian companions, and their warriors even dress like them. We can see this firsthand in the 4.8 teaser with the new enemies we will meet in Natlan. These enemies specifically dress like the Tepetli Sauri, a type of Saurian that we first saw in the Saurian teaser. According to Ranjit, the Tepetli Sauri also live in the mines of eastern Natlan, meaning they are likely close with the Children of Echoes. In fact, the enemies we see could be members of this tribe. Anyways, the Tepetli Sauri are able to drill underground and scale up walls, abilities that Khaenri'ah is able to mimic with her drill device. In fact, the other 2 characters shown in the 4.8 teaser also mirror the Saurian seen in the Saurian teaser. Mualani surfs over the water just like the Hydrosaurian, while Khaenri'ah is able to grapple through the air, just like the Dendrosaurian. When these characters use these abilities, they also have a special aura around them, which I'll discuss more in the character section. There is one more Saurian we know about called the Iktomi Sauri, and since they have been said to fly, this could be the Red Bird Saurians shown briefly at the end of the Saurian teaser. Other than the Saurians, we also know that the Fatui and some of their Harbingers will have some sort of influence in Natlan. Neuvillette learned from Arlecchino that the Harbinger Il Capitano was already in Natlan by the time we wrapped up with the Fontaine Archon quests, so that's already one confirmed Harbinger. He likely arrived early to make preparations for their Pyronosis plan, as it is the last Gnosis that the Fatui need to obtain. More recently, in the Ignition teaser, we learn that some sort of tournament is about to happen in Natlan. This will likely be a main focus of the Natlan Archon quests, and it will definitely involve the characters we saw in this teaser. Of course, I'll talk more about each of these characters later on. With all that said, it's time to move into the plot of Natlan. The plot section of this video will focus on a few different themes and how each of them could play into the main Archon quests of Natlan. First up, I want to talk once again about the Saurians of Natlan and the Pyro Sovereign as well. As we know, Saurians work as companions to the people of Natlan in the present day, but this wasn't always the case. Earlier in this video, I mentioned the lore of Unfinished Reverie, which described a tyrannical king who ruled Natlan and saw Saurians as inferior. While this tyrannical king is long gone now, I think similar ideas could still echo in forgotten corners of Natlan. Some people or groups may see Saurians as nothing more than monsters, and may think of it as wrong to work alongside them. There could be a tribe hidden away in Natlan that follows these ideals, holding a great disdain for the Saurians. Perhaps their ideals come from the tyrant, or maybe they just had bad experiences with the Saurians. Whatever the case is, some of these people may have found each other and formed a new tribe that does not work with the Saurians. Their disdain for the creatures could grow to such an extreme that they may want to attack the other tribes for working alongside the Saurians, something we could see once we reach Natlan. We would have to team up with the Saurians to stop these attackers and show them that not all dragons are bad. Speaking of a hidden tribe, we may have already seen a group like this in the 4.8 teaser. Here, we see an enemy go after Khaenri'ah and confront the other characters later on in the teaser. The thing is though, Khaenri'ah mimics the abilities of a Tepetli Sauri, and the enemies are dressed as Tepetli Sauri, so why would they fight each other? Perhaps these enemies are actually members of the hidden tribe in disguise, mimicking the Saurians to blend in with the other tribes and gain information. They could also just be members of a different tribe or even rogue warriors. Now, a plot like this does have the potential to bring the Pyro Sovereign into play, and I have 2 ideas for how this could work. First, they could be manipulated by the hidden tribe and tricked into letting them borrow their power. We would have to make them realize that they're being manipulated, but it might not be that easy. They could be a stubborn sovereign, which would lead to us settling the issue in a fight, potentially as a weekly boss in version 5.2. Only after we defeat them in combat will they listen to us and help us stop the hidden tribe. Second, they could be a completely independent party in the story. They could come into play after seeing what is happening between the hidden tribe and the Saurians, or they could watch from the sidelines and wait to see who wins. They could then challenge the winning side to a battle, fitting the theme of war. Like my first idea, this could also set up a weekly boss fight. In general, a conflict like this could lead to events that mirror the lore of Talking Stick. Like Tanakh, we may have to unite the tribes of Natlan to fight against a common enemy. With all the tribes together, we would also have a better chance against other threats in the future. Moving on to the next topic, I want to discuss some bigger picture ideas, including Khaenri'ah and Celestia. I think Natlan will bring us a good amount of lore that is very important to the overall story, as it is the last nation before Snezhnaya. Therefore, the lore we get here could help set up the plots we'll see in Snezhnaya. Starting with Khaenri'ah, Natlan is located next to Sumeru's desert, where the entrance to Khaenri'ah is found. Due to this close proximity, Natlan could have some sort of connection to the subterranean nation as well. We've already seen the 8-pointed star, which is used as a symbol for Khaenri'ah, as a symbol in Natlan as well, and even in the Pyro Archon's eyes. In previous videos, I've talked about something known as Primal Fire, which was mentioned in Xbalanque's title. Basically, the Primal Fire would be Natlan's equivalent to Fontaine's Primordial Sea. I think that this Primal Fire could also be tied to Khaenri'ah, and more specifically, the Crimson Moon Dynasty. Long ago, the people of Khaenri'ah's Crimson Moon Dynasty could have come across the Primal Fire underground. They could have harnessed its power to gain more power for themselves, while also making these new abilities a part of their bloodline. Even after this dynasty fell, the Primal Fire would be passed down, which would also make it the source for Arlecchino's mysterious fire powers. If this Primal Fire were to come into play during Natlan's Archon quests, it would most certainly allow us to get more information about Khaenri'ah. Instead of being a main plot during these Archon quests though, we may just get hints about it here and there. Later on, it could be brought into the spotlight during a Traveler Archon quest in Natlan. Here, we would meet Dainsleif again and learn more about the 5 Sinners of Khaenri'ah. We could also learn that they are interested in the Primal Fire, which is why Dane would be in Natlan researching it. Of course, the Primal Fire would also be quite important to the Pyro Sovereign. If they do make an appearance in Natlan's Archon quests, we could definitely learn some more lore from them. Switching direction now, I want to discuss the new book we got in version 4.7, The Little Witch and the Undying Fire. The title already could suggest a link to the Primal Fire, but that's not what I want to focus on. Instead, I want to talk about a different topic that this book mentions, a hybrid race of gods and humans, the Nephilim. This book is said to take place in the westernmost part of the Magic Continent, and if we translate that to Teyvat, the westernmost area would be Natlan. Therefore, it's possible that the Nephilim could be present in Natlan. Perhaps Columbina is one of these Nephilim, which would support her presence in Natlan. If the Nephilim do come into play in Natlan, then it would also make sense for us to get some more lore regarding Celestia as well. Again, we are getting ever closer to Snezhnaya, so this lore would be more than welcome. We could finally learn more about the Heavenly Principles and the Four Shades, a topic that I've been interested in for a long time now. The Traveler could also potentially learn more about the unknown god that initially set them on this journey, as to this day, we know very little about her. Natlan would be the perfect time to give us this lore, as it would give us plenty of time to theorize and speculate about how it will all come together during Snezhnaya's Archon quests and beyond. It could also help set up the future war that has been foreshadowed in the game quite a few times now. Now then, it's time to talk about one of the biggest factions in Genshin, the Fatui. The Fatui have been involved in the plot of every single nation so far, as their Harbingers are on the hunt for each of the Gnosis. In Mondstadt, Signora successfully ambushed Venti and obtained the Animo Gnosis. In Liyue, Signora and Tartaglia collaborated and eventually peacefully obtained the Geognosis from Zhongli. In Inazuma, Senora was killed by Raiden A, while Scaramouche obtained the Electro-Gnosis from Yaimiko before going AWOL. In Sumeru, we defeated Scaramouche and obtained the Electro-Gnosis, before Nahida gave it to Dottore along with her Dendro-Gnosis. In Fontaine, Tartaglia helped save citizens from the all-devouring Narwhal, which led to Neuvillette giving the Hydro-Gnosis to Arlecchino as a diplomatic gift. Therefore, it's quite obvious that the Fatui will have some sort of role in Natlan that will end with them retrieving the Pyro-Gnosis. As we already know from Neuvillette, Capitano arrived in Natlan around the time of the Fontaine Archon quests. Since he is likely the first of the 11 Fatui Harbingers, his role here must be quite important. Now, in previous videos, I've discussed the idea that the Pyro-Gnosis could actually be missing. This could explain why Capitano arrived in Natlan so early. He needed to get some leads on the location of the Gnosis before the Traveler got there too. Fortunately, I don't believe we'll be on his bad side. He wields his power responsibly, and he is said to be very righteous. If he doesn't see a reason to fight us, then we won't have to worry. In fact, I think we could even work together with the Fatui in Natlan. We have worked with Harbingers in the past, and we are in good terms with quite a few of them. Tartaglia greets us like a friend, and even trusted us with his vision during the Fontaine Archon quests. Arlecchino also sees us favorably, hoping to work with us more in the future. Wanderer often teases being evil, but he still works with the Traveler and wants to repay them for helping him. Therefore, this is something that we could realistically see happen in Natlan. Additionally, working closely with the Harbingers here could prove beneficial to future plot points in Snezhnaya and beyond. With an upcoming war seeming almost certain, Capitano may want to get us on their side against Celestia or whatever other threat we may face. Of course, there is the possibility that we will fight a Harbinger as a weekly boss in Natlan, but I feel this would be more akin to our fight against Arlecchino, a test above all else. Now, Capitano likely won't be the only Harbinger to appear in Natlan, and there is definitely room for a few more. To start, let's talk about Columbina. Many people, including myself, believe that Columbina could realistically make an appearance in Natlan, especially if she is one of the Nephilim. As for her role in the story, I think she will give us occasional hints to the overall plot. According to Arlecchino, Columbina can be rather unpredictable with the answers she gives. When we first meet her, she may speak to us in what seems to be nothing more than confusing words and riddles. However, as the story progresses, we would discover the true meaning behind her words, and that she has been secretly helping us all along with her riddles. She could hint at various different plot points, including the Pyro Archon, the Pyro-Gnosis, different conflicts, and so much more. Other than Columbina, we could also see the return of some Harbingers that we've already met in previous nations. The first of these Harbingers would be Arlecchino. Earlier in this video, I mentioned the idea of Natlan being home to a primal fire, and how it could potentially connect to Khaenri'ah's Crimson Moon dynasty, and by extension, Arlecchino. If this connection does end up being true, Arlecchino could make an appearance in Natlan and tell us more. After all, she did say flames course through her body like blood, and that it's literal for her. As for why she would be in Natlan beyond giving us lore, she could be here to prepare something for Project Stuja. Additionally, since we are on friendly terms with Arlecchino, her appearance here could help the idea of us working with the Fatui in Natlan. Now, the next Harbinger I want to discuss is Tartaglia. While we did just see him again in Fontaine, I feel that he would absolutely love to visit the Nation of War, as he loves a good fight. Since we know Capitano is already there, he may want to visit Natlan as well to try and impress the first Harbinger. In his voice line about Capitano, Tartaglia says that he wants to show him what he can do, meaning he wants to earn his approval. His appearance here could give him the opportunity to do just that. Now, the final Harbinger I want to discuss is Il Dottore. His appearance in Natlan could be related to an investigation of the Primal Fire, perhaps alongside Arlecchino. In Sumeru, we weren't on the best of terms with him, so his presence here could hinder the idea of us working with the Fatui. Also, it could potentially lead to a conflict between himself and the other Harbingers in Natlan. Perhaps he could take part of the Primal Fire for himself, making the other Harbingers turn against him and stop him. This would make him another candidate for a weekly boss fight, but I'll discuss that more later on. Dottore taking the Primal Fire could also lead to the scene at the end of A Winter Night's Lazo, where he is seen burning Irminsul. Perhaps no ordinary fire is able to burn Irminsul, but the world's Primal Fire could be strong enough to burn it down. Again, Natlan is next to Sumeru, so we could get a connection to Irminsul here. Switching gears now, it's finally time to talk more about the Pyro Archons of Natlan. Mavuika is the current Pyro Archon of Natlan, and she will play a vital role in Natlan's story. Starting with her history, we do know that there was at least one Pyro Archon that preceded her, Murata. However, I think that Mavuika could very well be the same person as the previous Pyro Archons of the nation. To explain this idea, I want to start with the quote about Natlan from Dane in Travail. "The rules of war are woven in the womb. The victors shall burn bright, while the losers must turn to ash." I believe this quote tells us more about the Pyro Archon themselves, and actually hides some details about her abilities. Perhaps when the Pyro Archon dies, they are able to be reborn from ashes, similar to a phoenix. In the Ignition teaser, we literally saw Mavuika turn into a phoenix, so that adds support to this theory. In addition, the quote I just mentioned can actually be split to represent different parts of this cycle. Losers must turn to ash would represent death, the rules of war are woven in the womb would represent rebirth, and the victors shall burn bright would represent reincarnation and a new form for the Pyro Archon. This idea may be hinted at further with the title of Natlan's Archon quests, Incandescent Ode of Resurrection. As such, the main plot of the Archon quests could be about the many different incarnations of the Pyro Archon and the mystery surrounding them. In the Archon quests, we could work with Mavuika to unlock the memories of her previous incarnations to uncover certain bits of information. This would allow us to uncover the location of the Pyronosis, but it could also reveal many more bits of information. For example, what if the Pyro Archon and the Pyro Sovereign are actually the very same being? I know this idea sounds crazy and a bit ridiculous, but hear me out for a minute. After being defeated by the Primordial One long ago, the Pyro Sovereign would eventually be reborn. However, their rebirth could work a bit differently compared to those of the other Sovereigns. When they die, their form could turn to ash. After that, just like I mentioned earlier, they could resurrect themselves just as a phoenix would. Still, even if they did have this power, wouldn't the Heavenly Principles be able to tell that they're still the Pyro Sovereign? Well, there actually is a way to get around this with the Primal Fire. In her story quest, Arlecchino's flames were said to possess the ability to delete memories from a person's mind. If her power does indeed come from the Primal Fire, then it would make sense that it would possess this ability as well. Therefore, when the Pyro Sovereign reincarnates, they could unleash the power of the Primal Fire, burning away certain pieces of memory from those in a certain area. If the Primordial One was close enough when the Pyro Sovereign reincarnated, they could have erased the knowledge of who the Pyro Sovereign was from the Primordial One's mind. They may remember that they defeated the Pyro Sovereign, but they wouldn't remember much else about them. This ability could also explain why Vanessa and the children of Murata knew so little about their Archon. Perhaps their ancestors were in the vicinity of a reincarnation, which led to their memories of Murata being erased. Without their memories of their god, they would leave Natlan and wander the world. One of these reincarnations could also be responsible for the formation of the Mare Jvari, Natlan's Ashen Sea. The burning of memories may have also been referenced in the description of the Agnatus Agate gemstone. The name in this description has been obscured, almost as if it was burned away. Now, there would also have to be a way for these memories to be recovered for this to work in the story. I think that the Primal Fire may also be able to restore the memories it once erased. After all, even though fire is dangerous and deadly, without it, life could not survive on our planet. It may be harmful, but it is also a source of energy and life for us. Therefore, when used properly, Mavuika may be able to restore her memories, allowing her to find the Pyronosis and more. Getting back to Dottore real quick, perhaps he is using the Primal Fire to restore lost information in Irminsul that the Fatui need for the upcoming war. With that said though, it's time to talk about the characters of Natlan. The characters section of this video will focus on the playable characters of Natlan, as well as their potential elements, weapons, and playstyles based on what we know about them so far. To start off, let's talk about Mavuika, the Pyro Archon of Natlan. Since she is the Archon, her element will obviously be Pyro. We first got to see her in the Ignition teaser, where she was shown to have quite the extroverted and fiery personality, which definitely fits with her title of Pyro Archon. She is seen confidently greeting her people and introducing this year's tournaments, while also showing no fear when talking to the most powerful of the Fatui Harbingers. Based on the ending of the teaser, she also wants to defy fate and bring the future of Natlan into the hands of the people. As for her as a playable character, I could definitely see her being a main DPS. Being the god of war, she would have quite a lot of experience in combat, and would overall fit very well for her character. She could also transform into a phoenix as part of her kit, as she is shown to have that ability in the Ignition teaser. For her weapon, I could see her being a claymore user. She is strong and confident, and I think a claymore would fit with those traits quite well. Then again, we do already have 4 Pyro Claymore characters, so perhaps she will use a sword or a different weapon instead. Moving on though, the next character I want to talk about is Xbalanque. While we didn't see them in the Ignition teaser, I still think it's worth talking more about them. They were the one who gave the quote in Nouvelette's official introduction, and from that, we learned that their title is One Entombed with the Primal Fire. The Primal Fire is something I've mentioned quite a bit already in this video, and it's likely to be very important in Natlan. Of course, with a title like that, Xbalanque may be very important to Natlan overall as well. Based on this title once again, I think that their element will be Pyro, just like Mavuika. I feel like they could hold a high-ranking position in Natlan, perhaps being in a position where they only answer to Mavuika. To me, this makes it even more possible for their element to be Pyro. In each nation that we've visited so far, we've met at least one high-ranking character that shares their element with their Archon. Acting Grandmaster Jean in Mondstadt uses Anemo, Tianchuan Ningguang in Liyue uses Geo, General Kujo Sara in Inazuma uses Electro, Acting Grand Sage Alhaitham in Sumeru uses Dendro, and Chief Justice Nouvelette in Fontaine uses Hydro. Xbalanque could very well be the one who continues this trend in Natlan. Now, it's also worth mentioning that they do know about the 7 Sovereigns, as they did give the quote on Nouvelette's official introduction. I don't think that they are a Sovereign, as they talked about them in third person, but they could still have some connection to the group. Again though, we haven't seen Xbalanque, so they may be saved for reveal later on. Anyways, I think we should talk about the first characters that we will get as playable from Natlan. In the 4.8 Natlan teaser, we got our very first look at Kachina, Mualani, and Kanik, the 3 characters that will be playable in version 5.0. These 3 are the characters we know the most about so far, so let's talk even more about them. Starting with Kachina, she possesses a geovision and mimics the abilities of the Teyvat Sauri. She seems to have an adventurous personality, traveling all across Natlan in the 4.8 teaser. In order to travel around, she makes use of a drill-like object that she is able to summon whenever she needs it. She is also seen to have a nose bandage, suggesting that she might run into trouble while out on her adventures. After all, we did see some enemies chasing after her in the teaser. Speaking of accessories though, she is seen wearing a pair of gloves or mittens that she likely uses to help with her adventuring. Now, Kachina also appears to be a hybrid, similar to many other characters that we've seen in Genshin so far. Her ears and tail resemble those of a rabbit, and she has symbolism of lightning bolts and wings on her outfit, which also fit the theme of a fast rabbit. As a playable character, I could see her being a support or an AoE damage dealer. She could give buffs to her teammates, including speed increases, while also using her drill to attack multiple enemies at once. For her weapon, I think either a bow or polearm could work. A bow would help her fight from a distance, allowing her to make quick work of any battles while adventuring. A polearm could fit even better though. Most polearm characters in the game have a drill attack for their charged attack, and a drill would definitely fit with the rest of her theme. Now, each of these characters is also shown to have a special aura around them at certain times that makes them glow and also lights up some of their tattoos. I think this is likely related to a new feature that is exclusive to Natlan characters, and more specifically, I think it could relate to the Saurians. For Khaenri'ah, her aura is seen when she is using her drill summon, which happens to be the feature of her kit most similar to the Teyvat Sauri seen in the Saurian teaser. Now then, the next character we see in this teaser is Mualani, who possesses a Hydro Vision and mimics the abilities of the Hydro Saurian. From what we've seen of her so far, she seems to have a carefree and bubbly personality. We first see her happily fishing, and throughout the rest of the teasers, she is almost always smiling. We also see her surfing on a shark summon, making her feel like a chill yet energetic surfer girl. She also seems to like cute things, as there are plenty of cute animal accessories seen on her outfit. Additionally, she may be a hybrid as well. She has 2 bits of hair on her head which almost look like flippers, though this could just be her hairstyle. Her eyes are shaped like fish though, which is very interesting to see. As a playable character, I could see her being a healer. While she is carefree, she does care for her friends as shown in the 4.8 teaser. As such, she could provide healing for the team so that they can keep fighting, while also potentially providing off-field support. For her weapon, I could see her either using a claymore or a catalyst. A claymore would be nice as we still don't have a Hydro Claymore character after all this time. On the other hand, a catalyst would help her make more waves to surf on, but that would also make her our 5th Hydro Catalyst character. As for her special aura, it occurs while she is surfing on her shark summon, the feature most similar to the Hydro Saurian seen in the Saurian teaser. For the final character that will be playable in version 5.0, we have Khaenri'ah, who possesses a Dendro Vision and mimics the abilities of the Dendro Saurian. He seems to have a laid-back and loner personality, as he is first seen relaxing in the trees by himself. While Khaenri'ah and Mualani look ready to fight at the end of the teaser, Khaenri'ah just simply crosses his arms. As a playable character though, I could definitely see him as a main damage dealer. Based on what we've seen of him so far, he would likely want to get fights over and done with, so he could deal a lot of damage to end the fight quickly. For his weapon, we do see him wielding a claymore in the 4.8 teaser. This claymore heavily matches his design, which leads me to believe that he will be a 5-star character. As for his special aura, it occurs while he is grappling through the air, the feature most similar to the Dendro Saurian seen in the Saurian teaser. In the Ignition teaser, we also see him alongside the mysterious self-proclaimed almighty dragon lord, Ka'uhul Eja. Not much is known about him, but his 2D pixelated appearance is definitely unique in Genshin. He could be a summon or companion to Khaenri'ah, sort of like Fischl in Oz. Now then, I think it's time to talk about the Fatui Harbingers once again. I've already talked quite a bit about which of the Harbingers I think could make an appearance in Natlan, those being Capitano, Columbina, Dottore, Arlecchino, and Tartaglia. So, out of all these Harbingers, which ones will be playable in Natlan? Well, Arlecchino and Tartaglia are already playable, so we won't focus on them right now. To me, Capitano and Columbina seem like the most likely candidates, as they are most likely to cooperate with the Traveler. Dottore does have some potential to be playable, but I feel as though they might save him for later on. Anyways, let's start by talking about Capitano. While we do see him in the Ignition teaser, we don't see a vision nor a delusion on his person. Based on what we know about him though, I think either Hydro or Cryo would fit him. Hydro would fit because of his sense of justice, while Cryo would fit because of his chilling blue eyes. It could also be possible that he wields multiple elements, as he is the first of the Fatui Harbingers after all. As I've said, I could see him being cooperative with the Traveler, as long as he sees no reason to fight against us. Like Tartaglia or Arlecchino, he would likely treat us with respect. As a playable character, I could definitely see him being a DPS. He is the first of the Fatui Harbingers, meaning he is incredibly powerful. For balancing reasons, he may hold back in combat, but he would still be a quite powerful unit. For his weapon, I could see him using either a claymore or a sword. A claymore would fit his theme of strength, while also matching Mavuika's weapon if she wields a claymore as well. On the other hand, a sword would fit if he was the Bloodstained Knight, as he wielded the black sword. Speaking of the Bloodstained Knight, in the Ignition teaser, we get a better look at Capitano's face, which shows an outline of his facial features. To me, it looks like his face is stained with blood, making him even more likely to be the Bloodstained Knight. Now then, the other Harbinger I want to focus on is Kalabina. While she doesn't appear in the Ignition teaser, it is definitely still possible for her to make an appearance during Natlan's Archon quests. For her elements, I think either Animo or Cryo would fit her. Animo would fit for her potential Istaroth connections, while Cryo would represent her being disconnected from Istaroth or the Nephilim. As for her personality, she would probably mess with the Traveler quite a bit, but ultimately still help them, similar to Wanderer. Her way of messing with us would just be her saying confusing things, which could be reflected in her voice lines. For example, she could say good morning in her goodnight voice line and vice versa. As a playable character, I could see her being a support character with confusion mechanics, similar to Tighnari. These mechanics could make enemies group together, allowing the heavy hitters of the team to take them all out at once. For her weapon, I could see her using a catalyst. She has a dreamy and ethereal vibe, which would fit nicely with a catalyst. I could also see her attacking and applying her debuffs from a distance instead of up close, which would fit a catalyst as well. With the Harbingers out of the way, I want to get back to the Ignition teaser and talk about the rest of the characters that we will meet once we reach Natlan. To start, I'll be talking about Citlali, who possesses a cryovision. From what we see in the teaser, she seems to like spending her time alone. When the tournament ball crashes into the room that she's working in, she gets angry and throws it hard back outside. Before she was interrupted, she also appeared to be working on some sort of fabric, making me think she could be an artist or some sort of designer. For her playstyle, I could see her being a pretty decent damage dealer. While she doesn't want to fight, she could actually be really powerful. Perhaps she is afraid of what she can do and thus prefers to stay by herself. For her weapon, I could see her using either a catalyst or a bow. Both of these are longer ranged weapons, which would allow her to fight from afar and stay in her own space. The next character we see in the teaser is Xilonen, who possesses a geovision. In the teaser, we see her catch the tournament ball while sleepily laying down on a tree branch, which tells me that she likes to get her rest. She also appears to be a hybrid of sort, as her ears and tail resemble those of a cheetah. For her playstyle, I could see her being a strong yet fast DPS, which is based on the strength and speed of a cheetah. Additionally, her kit could bring something new to the geo elements. For her weapon, I could see her using a claymore, which would once again fit the theme of a strong yet agile cheetah. The next character we see in the teaser is Janssen, who we actually first saw all the way back in the Travail trailer. Unfortunately, from her brief appearances in these trailers, we aren't able to see a vision on her. However, based on Travail, I think that her element is highly likely to be Pyro. In Travail, she holds fire in her hand, before creating a massive explosion of fire behind her that cracks the surface. Not much is known about her personality at the moment, but she does seem to have a bit of bad luck. She is shown to have a nose bandage, and instead of catching the tournament ball, she got hit on the head by it. Even before the Ignition teaser, many people noticed similarities between her and Bennett, so this bad luck here strengthens those theories even more. As a playable character, I could see her either being a DPS or a support. We do see how powerful she is in Travail, and she could potentially be similar to Bennett in combat as well. For her weapon, I think she will use a catalyst. The fire in Travail appears in her hand, so I think she will fight using hand-to-hand combat. The next character we see in the teaser is Chaska, who possesses a cryovision. She seems to have more of a stoic personality, as after catching the tournament ball, she contemplates what the return of the tournament means. For her playstyle, I could see her being more of a support character. She could lend aid from the sides with the information she gets, using it to provide buffs or even healing for other characters. As for her weapon, I'm not exactly sure what she could use, but I personally think a polearm would suit her. The final character we see in the teaser is Auroron, who only appears for a brief moment. We don't see what element he wields, but based on his color scheme, I think either Anemo or Electro would fit him. Unfortunately, he only appears briefly in the Ignition teaser, so not much is known about him or his personality. We do see him standing next to Capitano, so perhaps he is on the side of the Fatui. He could be training under Capitano and may even become a Harbinger himself as the story progresses. We can also see that he is a hybrid as well, as there is an animal ear shown in his head, with the other likely hidden by his hood. He also has two different colored eyes, one green and the other red. Again, since he only appears briefly and doesn't speak, it's hard to tell what he would be like in combat. Since he's next to Capitano, he could fight in a similar way to him, or even act as a support for him. Anyways, I think it's time to move on to the environment of Natlan. The environment section of this video will be focusing on Natlan's geography, settlements, creatures, and more. To start off this part of the video, I want to speculate on where in Teyvat Natlan could be located. We actually already have quite a bit of knowledge about Natlan's location, so let's get right into it. First off, we know from Augustus Lovelace that Natlan is located to the west of Sumeru, on the other side of the Great Red Sands. According to Ranjit, if we go this way to Natlan, the first area we enter would be the mines. Now, we can actually see parts of Sumeru in the background of the teasers that we've gotten so far. In the wide shot at the end of the Saurian teaser, you can see parts of the Girdle of the Sands way out in the distance. This can be seen once again very briefly in the 4.8 teaser. Speaking of that teaser, we also get a bit of Natlan's map here, which helps us fit everything together. On the southern part of the map, we can see a large area of water, which likely connects to the ocean south of Sumeru. We can also see the locations seen throughout the teasers on the map, which helps us further pinpoint Natlan's location. So, with everything we know now, Natlan will probably be around here in relation to the rest of Teyvat. As for how we will get to Natlan, there are a few different options for us to choose from. It seems that the most likely path we'll get at first will be from Sumeru in one way or another. Pathways from Fontaine are definitely possible as well, but I think those will be saved for future updates. Starting with the path from Sumeru, these entrances will likely come from either the Great Red Sand or the Desert of Hadramaveth. Whatever the case is, this path will first lead us into the mines of Eastern Natlan. By continuing through the mines, we would eventually reach the area seen in the wide shot of the Saurian teaser. Now, we could also come to Natlan through the Girdle of the Sands, filling the space shown below that area. It is possible that this entire area will be filled in at some point, but I think the initial entrance would be smaller, just like it was for Fontaine. Speaking of Fontaine, even though we probably won't get an entrance from there right away, we could still get one later. Before traveling to Snezhnaya, we could get a water route that travels from a maritime harbor around the Girdle of the Sands and into Natlan. Of course, there would also have to be a way for ships to travel up and down the waterfalls on the way, so some mechanisms would have to be added. We could also get another water route into Natlan from the south. On the map shown in the 4.8 teaser, we can see that Natlan is likely connected to the southern ocean of Teyvat. Perhaps at some point in the future, we'll be able to sail from Natlan, south of the desert, and reach Port Ormos. Once the entirety of the Blackcliff Forge is added, we may also be able to sail all the way to Liyue Harbor as well. Out of all of these options though, the Sumeru Desert seems to be the most likely choice. Of course, more entrances can still be added in the future, similar to Fontaine. Initially, we only had the Girdle of the Sands entrance in 4.0. Later on, a new entrance was added with Chenyu Vale in 4.4, before the entire lake was opened up in 4.6. Moving on though, I want to talk about the settlements in Natlan. Unlike the nations that we visited in the past, Natlan doesn't seem to have one main city. Instead, it has multiple cities, with each likely being home to one of the nation's different tribes. So, let's go over each of the cities that we've seen so far. The first of these cities is a platform city, first seen in the Saurian teaser. This city hangs off the side of a cliff, and it's where the Dendrosaurian lands at the end of the teaser. While the platform itself is already quite big, it's not the entire city. In this teaser, we can see a lower level on the platform that seems to have an entrance leading inside the cliff face. Based on the map we see in the 4.8 teaser, the mountain this city is built upon is quite massive, meaning there is plenty of space for more of the city to be hidden within the cliff. Since the city is likely so massive, it could be where the Adventurers Guild of Natlan is located, as well as other shops and resources we could use for our dailies. Now, we do get a glimpse at another location in the 4.8 teaser. We can barely see this area on the map from the teaser, putting it to the west of the platform city. Additionally, you can actually see the top part of the structure very briefly in the Saurian teaser when the camera pans around the Dendrosaurian. Initially, I thought that this structure was going to be another city of Natlan. However, upon release of the Ignition teaser, it was revealed that this area is more akin to an arena. This is likely where the tournament mentioned in the teaser will take place. Additionally, this area only has a few narrow entrances leading to it. This design seems quite intentional, as in the event of an attack, it would be harder for the attackers to get into the structure over these narrow paths. This could even be an overall theme for Natlan's cities, as it is the land of war. It could explain why the platform city is built so high up on the mountain. Now, in the 4.8 teaser, we can see a structure behind Mualani that I thought could be either an outpost or part of a city. With the release of the Ignition teaser, we can see that this structure is in fact a part of a larger city. There are some shops below, as well as some other very interesting looking structures. This city will likely be located in southern Natlan, bordering the southern ocean of Teyvat. While there are likely other cities in Natlan, we haven't seen them just yet. On the map, we can also see another structure, which could be a city or an old temple. Other structures seen in the background of these teasers also have the potential to be part of cities as well. Moving outside of these cities, it is quite clear that Natlan is home to a wide variety of different landscapes. By taking a look at the map from the 4.8 teaser, you can already see just how much variety is in this small slice of Natlan. Personally, I think this variety will absolutely make exploration a lot more fun and interesting. Now, let's talk about what we know about each of Natlan's different environments. To start off, we have the canyons to the north. This area was seen in the Saurian teaser during the wide shot, and later seen in the 4.8 teaser when the 5.0 characters all meet up. We can even pinpoint some of these locations to the map from that teaser. There is a watchtower in the background, which from the map is located right below the platform city. We can also see a Shrine of Depth in both teasers located about here, which would also put the position of the characters around here. Moving on, the next area I want to discuss would be the mines to the east. Based on what we know so far, the mines will likely be one of the very first places that we will visit in Natlan, at least if we take the way in from Sumeru. This location is where we first see the Tepet Lisori in the Saurian teaser, and it is home to some very interesting looking caves. It almost looks like a slice was taken out of these mountains, with only a few supports left to hold them up. There are also some very beautiful crystals in the mines which Khaenri'ah is shown to break with her ability. Also, the spot where the enemy attacks Khaenri'ah is right below where the 5.0 characters meet up, meaning the mines likely lead down into the canyons. You can tell these places are nearby, as this rock seen in both shots is the very same. Anyways, we can see a few more interesting things in the mines. When Khaenri'ah crosses the bridge, we can see a new flower or fruit to the left, which is also seen a few other times throughout the teaser. This could be one of Natlan's local specialties for characters, or it could also be used for new recipes. Later, when Khaenri'ah smashes the crystals, we can see two more new flowers in the background, which could either once again be local specialties or cooking materials. There is also what appears to be a new ore as well, likely to be used for the Natlan forgeable weapons that we will get in 5.0. Moving on though, let's talk about the spring source to the south. This area was first seen in the Saurian teaser, as it is where the Hydrosaurian first swims. It may also be where we first see Mualani, though this could also be the Fertile Lands. Either way, this location has a vast network of rivers and water that eventually connect to the ocean. We can also see that this water comes down from the mountains above. Now, the next location I want to discuss is the hanging trees in the center. This is where we first see Khaenri'ah, and it is located just south of the platform city. When Khaenri'ah swings out, you can once again see the Girdle of the Sands in the background. The map shown in the teaser also lines up with this information. As such, the platform city could belong to the tribe that comes from the Hanging Trees. The location of the city is very close to the Hanging Trees, the colors of the city match Khaenri'ah quite well, and the city is hanging over the rest of Natlan. Finally though, I want to talk about the mountain peaks to the west. In the background of the teasers we've gotten so far, we can see some mountains way out to the west. One of these mountains could be the volcanic area we see the Hydrosaurian swimming in. Since we haven't seen much of this area though, it might be coming in a later update, such as in 5.1 or 5.2. Still, this area does have some potential for lore. This is the only area of Natlan that we've seen with actual lava, making it different from the rest of the nation. As such, this could be caused by Natlan's divine nail, and the mountain overall could act as an opposite to the cold environment found while exploring Dragonspine. Speaking of exploration, I want to once again talk about the Saurians and how they could help us in this regard. Based on what we've seen so far, the Saurians are likely going to bring us a whole bunch of new exploration mechanics in Natlan. When we get to Natlan, we may be able to summon Saurian companions and use their abilities to traverse the varied landscapes of the nation. Thanks to the Saurian teaser, we have actually seen quite a few of these abilities already. The Tepetli Sauri can drill underground and climb up walls, similar to Khaenri'ah and her drill device. The Hydrosaurian can swim in water and lava, while also making use of lava falls, similar to Mualani and her surfing shark companion. The Dendrosaurian can grapple through the air to reach new heights, similar to Khaenri'ah and his grappling abilities. Of course, there are more Saurians whose abilities we haven't seen yet. At the end of the Saurian teaser, we see a red Saurian fly past. Perhaps this Saurian will allow us to fly or glide in certain areas. At the beginning of the Saurian teaser, we also see two more symbols that could represent the missing Saurians. Based on their appearances, I think they could be based on a bat and an ape. Of course, there could be many more Saurians beyond these 6, but we'll just have to wait and see what they look like. As for how these features will work, we unfortunately just don't know quite yet. They will likely be exclusive to exploration in Natlan though, as Saurians can only be found there. As I mentioned earlier, the auras of the Natlan characters may very well tie into the Saurians and the exploration mechanics of Natlan. All characters may still be able to utilize these features though, as in Fontaine, everyone was able to utilize arc power thanks to the Numa and Osea blocks scattered around. The Natlan characters, and perhaps the Power Line Traveler as well, would just be able to use these abilities more naturally. Besides the Saurians, Natlan is sure to give us a lot of interesting creatures. The nation is home to plenty of different landscapes, which means that we'll likely see a lot of variety in terms of fauna as well. So then, let's go over what we've seen in the teasers we've gotten so far, starting with the 4.8 teaser. First, we see a new type of weasel with bits of orange fur that resemble hair and a hoodie. It also has a blue nose and blue hands. Throughout the teaser, we also see some deer-like creatures. We can see someone Khaenri'ah summons her drill device, and from a distance, they appear to have horns. Another one is seen later in the mines, though this one seems to have long ears instead of horns. Next up, we see a group of sauropod-like creatures near some water. They are yellow with a blue pattern and long necks. They sort of look like chubby giraffes, and I love giraffes and dinosaurs, so this is an absolute win in my book. In the Ignition teaser, we also see some very cool looking birds, and I can't wait to see what other birds Natlan will bring. Of course, there is still plenty of room for other creatures to be seen in Natlan as well. What we have now is just the tip of the iceberg, and the variety of creatures we get is sure to be fantastic. With that said though, it's time to talk about the enemies we will see in Natlan. The enemies section of this video is mainly speculation and will cover my ideas for potential common and elite enemies, as well as new world bosses and weekly bosses. To start, we actually do know of some common enemies that we will see in Natlan. In the 4.8 teaser, we saw some Natlan warriors ready to fight against the 5.0 characters. These enemies in particular are shown to mimic the Tepetli Sauri, and each of them wields a unique weapon. These are likely just a few of the enemies we will get in Natlan, as these warriors could have many other variations, each mimicking a different one of Natlan's Saurians. Each variation of this enemy could be found in a different area of Natlan, reflecting the areas the tribes are typically found in. Moving on to speculative ideas now, I think we could get new kinds of elemental creatures in Natlan. I don't think we'll be fighting the Saurians themselves, so there would need to be another creature to fill that space. We could fight something similar, like new kinds of bishops. Some dragons could be friendly in Natlan, like the Saurians, while others would attack people. These attacking dragons are the ones we would fight against. Of course, Natlan will also bring us some new elite enemies to fight against. The first idea I had for elite enemies were the Ashen Spirits. These creatures roam the wastes of the Mare Javari, attacking anyone or anything that gets too close. In reality, these creatures are the spirits of fallen adventurers that have taken on the power of Pyro after dying in the Mare Javari. These spirits aimlessly wander the Mare Javari, as they were adventurers when they were alive. Most of their memories would be gone, and they would only know how to explore or attack. The other idea I had for elite enemies were the Lava Beasts, who would live in the most extreme areas of Natlan. This would of course include the Mare Javari, but it could also include volcanic areas and even underground locations. They are extremely dangerous creatures forged in the lava of Natlan, attacking anything they see. I got this idea from the creature Stanley saw when he was in the Mare Javari years ago. Of course, Natlan is definitely going to bring us some new world bosses to fight as well, and I have a few ideas for them. Keeping with the recent theme, my first idea is a mighty phoenix that dwells within the Mare Javari. The Lava Walker artifact set talks about a phoenix in the Mare Javari, and this idea is based on that. This giant bird would utilize Pyro to fight against us. It could attack from the air for some of the fight, making longer range characters recommended against it. It could also use its wings to stir up the ash in the area, temporarily obscuring our view. When it hits a certain amount of HP, it could turn to ash. At this point, we would help it resurrect from the ash using Pyro. Since the Phoenix was worshipped in the past, it would only make sense for this battle to be a test of our strength against a powerful being. Now then, the next boss I want to discuss is more like an overall theme: Bishop bosses. Since Saurians are common in Natlan, I thought that we could also find some bishops hidden away around the nation. These bishop bosses may be able to utilize multiple elements, similar to bishops we fought in the past. They may have evolved like the Saurians, but they didn't work with humans. The next idea I had was a Temple Guardian. This would be a magical or mechanical creation that guards the ruins of an ancient temple or other sacred location that has been long abandoned. I could see a boss like this using either Dendro or Geo, while also giving drops for Kanish or Kachina. Dendro would fit, as by this point it may be overgrown with vines, and Geo would fit its status as a solemn and unrelenting guard. This boss could be introduced as part of a World Quest series, unlocking when we progress far enough into it. After defeating it for the first time, we would move on to explore the ruins that it guards. The final idea I had for a world boss was a Sea Serpent. This would be a mythical creature that resides in the southern part of Natlan, near the spring source or the fertile lands. A boss like this would most likely utilize Hydro in combat, meaning it would also give drops for Mualani. In combat, I feel it could act somewhat similar to Beisht during the Jade Chamber interlude quest. It could blast Hydro at us from afar at some points, while also moving in close at other points. It could also dive underwater and attack us from below, meaning we would have to stay on our guard at all times during this fight. Finally, a new region wouldn't be complete without a new weekly boss. While we won't get a new weekly boss until at least version 5.2, I still want to speculate on what we could potentially see. For my first idea, I want to talk about the Pyro Sovereign. Earlier in this video, I did discuss a few ideas regarding them becoming a weekly boss. We could fight to make them realize that they're being manipulated, we could fight to test our strength, or if they are the Pyro Archon, we could fight for the Gnosis. In the first phase, they would start by testing our strength. They would send out some attacks to see how we defend against them, while also letting us attack to see what we can do. If they have a human form, they would use it in this phase, as they wouldn't want to unleash their true power unless it became necessary. Once they see us as a worthy opponent, we would enter the second phase of the fight, where they would unleash their true power and transform into their sovereign form. In this phase, they would focus more on attacking us, going after weaknesses they noticed in the first phase. They would try to overwhelm us with attacks, but we would be able to spot their weaknesses and win the fight. Now then, the next idea I had for a weekly boss would be Columbina. Throughout this video, I've discussed the idea of us working together with the Fatui, so we would need a reason to fight her. Of course, there are a variety of plots that could lead to a confrontation like this. They could be threatening Natlan or the Pyro Archon, or they may simply want to test us and our strength to see if we can help them. If Columbina does end up making an appearance in Natlan, she could be the one we end up fighting. In the first phase, she would be calm and collected, almost seeming like a damsel in distress. While the environment would feel calm and normal, there would be eerie undertones to the battle. In this phase, she would be pretending to be weaker than she truly is, trying to lull us into a false sense of security. When we get overconfident, she would unleash her power and begin the second phase of the fight. In this phase, she could take on a new form, perhaps appearing as a biblically accurate angel. She would still remain calm and collected while attacking, making the whole fight feel all that more eerie and unsettling. She would use ranged attacks with her wings, and some of these attacks could make the player confused as well. Keeping up with the Harbingers, the next idea I had for a weekly boss was Il Capitano. If we did fight Capitano, it would be for similar reasons as for us fighting Columbina. Since he is the first and Columbina is the third, he seems a bit less likely as a weekly boss, but I still do want to discuss him. Like the other bosses I've talked about so far, Capitano would remain calm in his first phase in order to test our strength. He would want to hold back more than the others, as he holds great strength as the strongest Harbinger and he knows it well. At first, he would just want to see how strong we are and would see no reason to go all out against us. However, something we do could show him just how strong we are, which would lead him to showing us his true strength. In the second phase, Capitano would go all out against the Traveler, with his attacks becoming both swift and merciless. He could also utilize multiple elements in this phase, creating reactions against us by himself. Like Arlecchino's weekly boss fight, this may be a fight that the Traveler canonically loses. Capitano would still see our determination though, and he may offer to help us train and become more powerful in the future. Now, the final idea I had for a weekly boss was Il Dottore. Unlike the other two Harbingers, a fight against Dottore would be more of a battle instead of a simple test of strength. Earlier on in this video, I discussed the idea of Dottore stealing some of Natlan's primal fire for himself. If he does do this, the other Harbingers could confront him, leading to us fighting against him. In the first phase, he would use the form we saw in Sumeru, but unlike the other Harbingers, his attacks would be merciless right away. In combat, I feel like he would attack from a distance. In the manga, he did use ranged weapons, so perhaps he could use something similar to those here. He also seems like one to not get involved in combat too much, so he may prefer to attack from far away. Eventually, we would start to overwhelm him, which would lead him to use the primal fire on himself to increase his power. In the second phase, his attacks would hit even harder than they did before, while also being imbued with pyro. He could even start attacking up close against the Traveler instead of from a distance as he did before. After the fight, I do think that he will manage to escape, setting up a plot for Snezhnaya or beyond. With all that said though, it's time to get into the final major section of this video, the culture. This section will be going over the various different aspects of Natlan's culture and what we know about them. To start off, I want to talk about the inspirations for Natlan and the potential they will bring. Natlan seems to take inspiration from a wide variety of cultures, including African cultures, Mesoamerican cultures, Polynesian cultures, and many more cultures from around the Pacific Ring of Fire. Once again, this is reflected in the variety we've seen so far in Natlan, and I'm very hopeful that we're going to get a lot more representation from each of these cultures. The tribes, creatures, bosses, and lore could all be inspired by these cultures, giving us a whole bunch of interesting lore. While some previous nations of Genshin have taken inspiration from different cultures, Natlan is a bit different. The inspiration of those previous nations was mostly mixed together, and it could be a bit more difficult to see the individual influences. With Natlan though, we have the individual tribes, which I hope will allow the inspirations to shine through more. Each of these tribes will have their own unique lore and histories, which I really can't wait to see. I'm very excited to see what lore we get in Natlan, as what we have now is already super exciting to me. I only hope it does justice to the cultures it was inspired by and tells these stories in a respectful way. Now, as we know, Natlan is the land of war, ruled by the Pyro Archon, the god of war. As such, the ideals of war will definitely be a prominent theme in Natlan's culture. Throughout the story, we could see what each tribe thinks about the overall concept of war and how the people react to it. Some people may see it as pointless and want nothing to do with it, while others may enjoy the thrill that battle gives them. From what we've been told, war is a constant in Natlan, raging like an undying flame. We do know that there's a tournament to be held in Natlan, but beyond that, we don't know too much about the ideal of war itself. Perhaps when the traveler arrives in Natlan, they will be the one to bring the tribes together to fight against a common enemy. This would mirror the events of Talking Stick and Unfinished Reverie, while also allowing us to gain more allies for that upcoming war that keeps getting foreshadowed. Despite Genshin being available for almost 4 years now, we still have not seen a single NPC that hails from Natlan in-game. According to Ranjit, people in Natlan have a lot of reservations about leaving their homeland, but he doesn't give any exact reasons as to why this is. He does say that he doesn't believe it is due to a fear of unfamiliar environments though. So then, why do the people of Natlan not want to leave their homelands? Well, there could be a few different answers to this question. They could believe it is bad luck to leave their homeland, or it could be seen as deserting. Starting with the bad luck bit, this idea would actually tie into another character we've met in Genshin, that being Bennett. Some people believe that he was initially from Natlan, but was brought to Mondstadt while he was still a baby. His bad luck would have come from the fact that he left his homeland of Natlan. Therefore, this would be more than just a superstition, it would be a literal curse. As for the origins of this curse, it could have been placed long ago, perhaps by a previous Pyro Archon. Since her ideal is that of war, she would see deserters as traitors, and therefore cursed any who left Natlan to have bad luck. Of course, there could also not be a curse, and it could just be seen as disrespectful. Being the land of war, it may be seen as desertion if you leave Natlan, as you are expected to stay and support your tribe. Alternatively, they may not want to leave simply because of how beautiful their nation is. I mean, personally, I really can't wait to explore Natlan. Now, while this nation may not be as technologically advanced as Fontaine, Natlan still has some quite impressive tech. In the teasers we've gotten so far, we've seen quite a bit of it. First off, their cities and structures are built in very unique and impressive ways. The platform city is built on the side of a cliff, and is likely carved into the mountain as well. Obviously, this is no easy feat, and it would have taken a lot of engineering, planning, and hard work to get the city built. The arena also looks like it could house some interesting technology. The balloon structure that surrounds the area is incredible, and is truly a beautiful engineering marvel. Of course, there are also the devices we see Kachina and Mualani summon in the 4.8 teaser. Kachina's drill is capable of traveling across roads and up walls, making it quite the useful transportation tool. Additionally, it's able to impact the ground with such force that it shatters stones and gems. Mualani's shark summon is able to surf across the water, and it also looks incredibly lifelike. The enemies we see in this teaser also have some interesting technology as well. For example, the main enemy we see here has a unique pizza cutter-like weapon, which I think looks incredibly cool. He is also able to summon a chunk of rock and then hit it with his weapon. As we get closer and closer to Natlan, we may see more of this technology and how it blends with the culture of the nation. What we've seen so far is already very interesting, so I can't wait to see what else they come up with. Like the rest of Natlan, the outfits that we've seen so far have been incredibly varied. They are inspired by different cultures and places after all, so that does make a lot of sense. Of course, we have the warriors who dress like the Saurian companions, who we first saw in the 4.8 teaser. They mimic their companions all the way down to their headgear, with tattoos that match as well. Each of the playable characters have their own unique designs as well. Despite the differences between them, the outfits are all suited for more arid climates, which Natlan is sure to have plenty of. There are also quite a few shared motifs throughout these outfits as well. Bandanas or other headgear are quite common on Natlan's characters, and simple yet sharp shapes such as triangles and squares can often be found as well. In addition, each character also has tattoos as well as shapes in their hair. Those last details are something I want to focus on a bit more. Earlier in the video, I mentioned that each of the Natlan characters has a special aura surrounding them when they use a certain ability. Kachina when she uses her drill device, Mualani when she surfs on her shark summon, and Kanish when he grapples through the air. As I've said, the abilities they use when they have these auras matches the abilities of the Saurians we saw in the Saurian teaser. However, this aura isn't the only thing that happens when they use these abilities. If you look closely, you can see that some of their tattoos and bits of their hair glow as well. This is all likely connected to Natlan as a whole, and it can be assumed that this aura feature is exclusive to Natlan characters. As for the visions, they bear a design similar to patterns seen in Mesoamerican culture. Sharp spiral patterns also adorn these visions, similar to the sharp shapes seen commonly on these designs. Anyways, that's pretty much everything we know about Natlan, as well as the speculations I wanted to talk about. Of course, there may have been a few things I missed here and there, so let me know if I did in the comments below. Also, there may be more teasers for Natlan in the future that I obviously can't cover in this video, but I will be talking about them over on my Twitter, live on Twitch, and in my Discord. If this video somehow wasn't enough for you and you want more of my thoughts on Natlan, I recommend checking out my Natlan speculation miniseries. I also have videos on the lore of Talking Stick, Lava Walker, Unfinished Reverie, and many other topics that I discussed in this video, so I recommend those if you want more information. I would love to hear your thoughts and ideas for Natlan in the comments below as well. Anyways, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Sources and further readings are also in the description if you want to check them out. I hope you all have an amazing day, and I'll see you all in the next video.